fire with shadows on my heels. Scars turn to stories that taught me to feel. Lost in the silence, found in the flame. Now wear my battle cry without shame. This isn't the end, it's where I begin. A soul that remembers the fire within.
Welcome back to another episode of A Warrior Spirit, brought to you by Praxis 33. I'm your host, Daryl Snow. Let's dive in. Today I have the pleasure of an old colleague of mine, and I say old lightly, just long time past, Tim Bongard. Tim was working at the same college I was many years ago. He's led an eclectic life, done many things, and really glad that he's still here with us to share his story and share his journey. And Tim, I appreciate you today. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, Daryl. It's a pleasure to see you again and to be here. I appreciate this opportunity.
I know some of your history. I know some of your past, but may I ask where little Tim grew up and where those beginnings were?
Sure. My wife Maureen and I are originally from New Jersey.
Okay.
We grew up just outside of Newark Airport in a town called Roselle.
Okay.
We actually were in the same neighborhood, and Maureen and I went to kindergarten together.
Wow.
We were in school all through elementary school and then into the beginnings of high school. So we have some background together.
Some history.
And my dad owned the local hardware store in our neighborhood. Grew up there. My both sets of grandparents were nearby. One was actually in our home at one point, and the other was just down the street, 150 yards away. That was my German grandparents. I was very fortunate, and I guess my life story here, even from early on, is the hand of God and divine providence and the role that that plays in our lives, whether we see it or not. Oftentimes we bounce through life and go through the events of our lives and not really know or see that this was definitely God at work.
Would you say you had a happy childhood, a tumultuous childhood? What was your childhood like?
I had a very confusing childhood on a couple different levels. One, my mother's parents lived with us. Her father passed away relatively early from what is now Alzheimer's.
Mhm.
So grandma stayed in the house with us, and unfortunately, she was an alcoholic.
Mm.
Just down the street, however, were my German grandparents, my dad's folks, and they were wonderful people. My grandmother was the sweetest thing in the world. She loved to garden and she loved to take care of the home. She was industrious, but she was this tiny little thing that just was filled with love. My grandfather was an eclectic madman. He he was a photo engraver by trade, but he had a number of different interests: photography, ceramics. We had a printing press in his garage.
Wow.
I learned my alphabet by sorting lead type into a California case,
Wow.
which kind of scrambled up A, B, C, D, E, F, G, because that's not how the California case is arranged. So I had this dichotomy going on that has taken me a good, well into my adulthood to figure out. On one hand, in our own home, we had grandma and her problem, and my mother who was enabling her, but just full-blown denial of what was going on. And the roughing up that you would get from that kind of thing So I easily identify with people who say they had a real rough childhood, like an alcoholic family or whatever. On the other hand, here is this hand of God where whenever things got crazy, I could walk down the street and walk into a home filled with love.
Mm,
Um, okay, growing up as a teenager, and you and I aren't that far apart in age,
right.
but in the late 60s, early 70s, if you were a teenager who had learned how to repair cuckoo clocks and did ceramics and played with printing presses and other stuff like that, yeah, you were beyond nerd.
Hmm. Yeah.
This was geeky to an extreme. But what a wonderful kind of education I got from Uppa, as I called him.
Hmm.
He just was into so many different things. And then Dad was just up the street the other way. The hardware store was equidistant, going in the opposite direction. So I spent a lot of time in the hardware store, and then had a lot of adult friends when I was a teenager. So it was a somewhat weird growing up experience. It really postured me for developing a pretty eclectic lifestyle,
Hmm.
or a whole series of eclectic interests.
Hmm.
Um, but there was this counterbalance and counterplay all the time between being affirmed and being destroyed.
Hmm.
And oftentimes it was hard to sort the two out. And I still have times where something will be said, something will happen where that I find myself reacting because of my alcoholic background,
Right.
and yet at the same time being so joyful and grateful for that other side. Because if I didn't have Alma and Uppa, I would have crashed and burned,
Hmm.
and you would have never met me. I
Yeah.
would have been dead long before we had a chance to meet.
Well, I totally understand that. In my own household, there was a lot of chaos and trauma from one side of the family, very rigid Catholicism, strict, harsh military, uh, ogreish type behavior. And then on
Mhm.
the other side, very loving, nurturing, caring, type. So it was a solace to be with one and a torment to be with the other.
Mhm.
And I know from my own bringing, I rejected Catholicism as soon as I had a brain enough to choose. The regality of it, and the pomp and circumstance of it, just annoyed me. It wasn't the spiritual connection of God that I was looking for. I've always said that I find more connection with God sitting on a rock watching the ocean than I do sitting in a pew watching a guy preach.
Mm.
And I think you really have to strive to find your connection when you're in the chaos environment with the nurturing environment, because you can go one of two ways. You can follow into the chaos, or you can follow into the nurturing. And
Sure.
growing up, did you gravitate naturally to God, or was that thrust upon you and you just saw it working in your life?
No, not really. My folks were not really all that religious. um, we went to a small Methodist church in our neighborhood. For a while, there was another family there that was running the youth group, and one of the times the youth group went to Shea Stadium to hear Billy Graham preach.
Oh,
And I listened to his sermon, and when the altar call came, yeah, I sort of followed along with everybody else and went forward. And then when I got down onto the field, it was kind of like, yeah, well, just give me the book, and yeah, I'll see you later. And then I got a Gospel of John and took it home. And after reading the Gospel of John, gave my life to Christ.
what's amazing, Tim, is that we parallel in many ways, not just age, but When I was like 11, my mom dropped me off at a movie theater. Um, Turned out to be a Christian film. Uh, didn't know that at the time. Went in and really enjoyed the film. But at the end, Billy Graham walked out behind the curtain and gave his
Oh,
altar call. And I gave my life to Christ that day as well. Even though I had grown up in the Catholic Church, that was the day I actually gave my life to Christ. And it's very interesting that Billy Graham played a part in both of us.
it for me, it had a profound effect at first. I remember reading the Book of Acts afterwards, and then the Farley family, which they were the youth group leaders, they moved, and everything kind of fell apart, and things got really crazy at the house. So I did everything I could to get away from the house. And one of those things I did was I joined the first aid squad. So at 15 years old, I joined the cadet corps,
Hmm.
started rolling on ambulances. And by the time that I got to be 17, I was now captain of cadets and a real hotshot. I mean, I knew my stuff. I was really good at it, but I was also a hotshot, like Hawkeye Pierce.
Yeah.
And I had drifted very far away from the Lord.
Hmm.
I was dating a girl that was like 2.5 years older than me. I was up to my neck in all kinds of trouble and the stuff, panicking the daylights out of my parents. And we had a call one July evening, a woman in childbirth. We got there and the baby was crowning, about to come, but we decided to try and race her to the hospital. We were only 5 miles from, Elizabeth General Hospital. So we loaded her in the ambulance and we got halfway there. And there was this knock on the wall between the cab and the back of the rig. Pull over, the baby's coming. Now, there are two attendants in the back. I'm up front as an assistant driver. To make a long story short, one of the attendants bailed out. I was the only other one with childbirth qualification. They threw me in. This is a real mess. The cord is wrapped around the baby's neck. It's tearing the placenta away from the wall of the uterus. The mother is in agony. And I looked at all this, and up to that point, Daryl, if I couldn't actually take care of things or do something, then my force of personality, I would BS my way through things. Just by my force of personality, I would say, yeah, right, right. Well, this is where the rubber meets the road. No amount of force of personality is going to save this child or this mother. I It hit me like a ton of bricks. I bowed my head. It was kind of like the last 2 or 3 years just flashed before my eyes. Lord, please forgive me, but send help. No, I'm not quite sure what I was expecting. I think maybe I was expecting Gabriel to appear in the back of the rig, deliver the baby, and then split. Instead, I open my eyes. Okay, let's see what we can do. And there's a knock on the cab door. The back door opens, and the driver says, "Hey, we got company." And like Hawkeye Pierce, I said, "Great, let's have a party." He goes, "No, you don't understand. It's the doctor." What? Um, this old retired pediatrician who happened to be walking past the rig, who was saying, "No, I'm not getting involved. No, I'm not getting involved." And there's this voice in his head screaming to tell him to stop and to ask if we needed help. He wasn't just a retired pediatrician, Daryl. He was the former head of the emergency room at St. Elizabeth's Hospital.
Hmm.
So he comes into the back of the rig. The other attendant bails out. He delivers a baby. We get back to the ambulance corps. Everybody else is inside popping champagne. This is the very first childbirth that we've had on the corps. This is a great moment of celebration, though we did absolutely nothing. This was a big deal. I'm standing out on the apron looking at one of the most beautiful sunsets that I had seen in my hometown and going, me? Why did you listen to me? Is this some sort of cosmic joke? Is this for real? Did did what just happened really happen? If this is real, you're going to have to prove this to me. You got to show me you're for real. And ever since then, it has been one event after the other demonstrating the reality of the divine intervening in my life and the life of my family and of my friends, showing me, yes, indeed, it's real.
And how old were you?
17.
Yeah.
17. And uh it was life altering. It changed the trajectory of my life. At that point I thought I was going into nursing school. Nah, I ended up in Bible college.
Mm.
And I thought at one point maybe I'm going into the ministry. No, I ended up going into business. I have a resume that reads either like an eclectic act of genius or a train wreck, depending upon my point of view, mood, or
Yeah. The guy who
whatever.
can't make up his mind, right?
Yeah, right, right. But it has been a wild ride, but it's been God all the way. I've spent time working for an international camera company. Um, I uh, I was a ranger for the Boy Scouts of America for a decade. I've had my own business a couple of times. I worked for the college, so it's a lot of different things.
Let's talk about the Ranger for just a minute.
Sure.
And I again, I'm amused over on this side because my wife and I joke that on her one, the 23 years that I've had like 23 or 24 different jobs, and she's had 23 years at one job.
Right, right.
So I get what you're saying. What took you to becoming a ranger? Because I know that I would not be an Eagle Scout if it weren't for a mentor who chose to be a scout leader.
Yeah.
So I know the impact that those guys have. What led you down that path?
I have been in scouts as a kid and got to Life Scout and almost finished my Eagle. And then that girl that was a bit older than me kind of,
Flipped your wings?
yeah,
Yeah,
it wheels women and work. That's what they say happens to older scouts, whether they get their Eagle or not.
yeah.
Surprisingly, most of the Rangers in the Ranger Corps throughout the United States back when I was in it, the majority of them were Life Scouts, not Eagle Scouts. But they saw the value that, what it would have been to be an Eagle. So a lot of them ended up being Eagle mentors
Yeah.
like you had. Um, it was really, again, the hand of God and circumstances. I had my own um, public relations company. I was finding sponsorship for race cars and doing some other stuff in motorsports. I was writing freelance articles for a couple of newspapers in Eastern Pennsylvania. Um, and that was good. And when the money was really good, it was really good. And when it was not so good, it was real bad. And Maureen was just like, please, can't we have something steady?
Hmm.
And then it got to a point where some things happened within NASCAR back during that time period where they decided to try and move to a Madison Avenue kind of approach to sponsorship. And that wrecked it for all of us little guys that were in the business of finding sponsorship and so on. So I got to find something else to do. I had a part-time gig working for the Boy Scouts with the local council doing what they call scout reach, which is basically seeding new
Hmm.
troops and so on. And as I was meeting with one of my supervisors one time, he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm late for this meeting. Our ranger just quit." What? Yeah, the ranger at Camp Akahila just quit, and we're in a bit of a scramble. We don't know where to look for, a good candidate. Hello, I grew up in a hardware store. I All they knew about me was, I was a computer geek. They didn't know that other part of my background, property management or anything else. So I applied for the job and then eventually got it. Oddly enough, 2 years before, my son and I had gone up to that same camp. I brought him up there for what they called uh, Harvest Fest.
Hmm.
And as we walked through the camp, I thought, wow, wouldn't this be cool to live here, Joe? He was like, yeah, Daddy, this would be really neat. Two years later, here we are. It was an experience where, what the heck did I get myself into? But it turned out to be one of the most wonderful experiences that I've had in my life. And a lot of it being uh, God again walking with me and helping me and getting me through stuff and uh, learning a lot about people and the land and so on. It was great.
So you obviously did this a little later in life because your son was old enough to understand. And so I want to go back just a little bit from the time of your life altering experience, saving that baby, to discontinuing your relationship with the older woman, to reconnecting with your elementary kindergarten school friend. Like where did that bridge come
How did
back?
that all happen? Um, Actually, Maureen and I, this is our second marriage for both of us. We both had uh, marriages prior, uh, and had three kids early on the earlier marriages, and a mutual friend helped reconnect us together once we were single again.
Hmm.
And then it was one of those things where um, the first time that I took Maureen's hand to go out on a date as an adult, we're now in our early 30s. I took her by the hand and it was like, oh, this was the one all the time.
Hmm.
This is the real thing, you know. And because of some of the other stuff early on in my life, especially the conflict and chaos at home, um, I I really didn't understand what real love was,
Hmm.
or the genuine depth of it, or I just was kind of like going by rote. It's like picket fences, you go steady, you go steadier, you get
Hmm.
pre-engaged, you get engaged, and you end up with the picket fences and so on. Not realizing that my first wife and I were a great high school couple. We were an okay college couple. We were a marginal late college couple. We were a lousy married couple.
Hmm.
And that was me. That wasn't her. That was all me. I take responsibility for that. I just didn't get it. I didn't understand what the real deal was.
Hmm.
And I think what I tried to teach my kids was that, there's lots of different ways to love, and you can have lots of different love experiences, whether it has the power to orbit or not, to
Hmm.
get to the moon and back. Not all of them have that. So you can be a great college couple, you can be a great steady couple, but that's about all the fuel that it's got, you
Hmm.
know. And there's no shame in that. The shame is that when you decide to take it further than what it has the fuel or life for, and try and make it work, and then it just goes all, you know.
Yeah, I think some relationships are meant to be seasons. I know I would have never married my first wife if I'd have been healed and whole. The
Right,
best thing that
right,
came out of it is my daughter, which was two. She was two at the time that I met my ex-wife. She's still my daughter today. And I look back as a more whole and healed individual, and I realized I wasn't there for my ex-wife. I was there for that child who is now my daughter. And I can put that into perspective. And it's interesting because even with our connection to God, even in those moments where you surrendered to your knees, there's still some tumultuous piece that if we don't rectify, if we just acknowledge it and think that we've dealt with it, it permeates the rest of our life until we really turn and dig it out at its root and then extract it. And I always think of like weeds in the garden, right? The weeds in our garden, if we just go out and cut the tops off, yeah, we have a pretty garden, but they
right,
keep growing back.
right,
And until you dig them out at their root, well, that's how our trauma and our chaos and our, in my case, anger and these other things play out. They look really pretty on the surface because you got them contained until you don't.
right, right.
Was that the same for you?
Yeah, I had a lot of stuff come out sideways, as Maureen calls it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I am so profoundly sorry that I put my first wife Karen through so much.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of it was so unhealthy, so unwell. I think part of our problem, Daryl, is that a lot of us don't understand that life is a process.
Mm,
There's a very Western approach to things that we say, oh, I should know better. Like you learn it once and then automatically, okay, we've got that. Check that
right.
box
Yeah.
and we're good to go. Yeah, right. Um, Life very much is in between ultimate wrong, where there's no question that whatever this is, it's wrong, and ultimate right, where there's no question whatsoever that this is absolutely the right thing to do. That there's ugly, poor, good, better, best,
Mm-hmm.
and in between those 2 points is it's a continuum, and you got to work up that continuum, and it's effort in order to work that. But then that's also the hand of the divine, where we get a chance to grow and we get a chance to be cultivated and we get a chance to learn that God leads us through lessons and tries to teach us and tries to bring us into that person that he wants us to be. And we don't give ourselves enough time or credit or
Right.
contemplation
Or grace.
or grace to sit and think and be a partner with God, or to invite God to be a partner with us. Please show me how to do this. I can't do this on my own. How do I do this? Um, but I'm always amazed. I look back over my life and I see so many times where He has taught me things, or where I'm involved in something and it's like I don't know what to do, and then suddenly something comes to mind where, oh, it was a similar situation back several years ago. Oh, I do know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He taught me this a long time ago.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
also think that one of the things that we get in that period is to learn forgiveness and not only have others forgive us, but for us to learn to forgive ourselves, because we are often our hardest critics and beat ourselves up more than others possibly can. So when we learn that forgiveness and that grace, but our entire life is a stepping stone to whatever our future is, you
right?
know. I mean, I look back when I was homeless, living out of my car, I wasn't sitting there going, "Hey God, thanks for the crap," you know. I was just trying
Right.
to get out of it. But now I take that lesson and 10 or 15 years later, 20 years later, whatever, now I can use what I learned back then to help guide and help others, there. So everything that we're going through um, is preparing us for where we're ultimately going to glorify Him the most,
Right. Yeah.
and we're going to bring others too. What did you use to go from the not so great husband to the kind, caring man that I've come to know and the better husband now? What, I mean, because you already had your profound interaction with God at 17, but it didn't keep you on that other side of the line.
I
So,
I, I think that there were some things that I learned at Northeastern, which was the Bible college they ended up going to. Um, there were some other things in my early Christian life experience, which is far from perfect. Um, but I had a lot of good mentors, a lot of good teachers. Um, I had an uncle that um, insisted read Proverbs daily. You know, uh, read a chapter of Proverbs every day. So, like on the 16th, read chapter 16. On the 17th, read chapter 17, because magically there are 31 chapters in Proverbs. And at first, it reads kind of like a catalog from Spencer Gifts.
mhm,
Now, your older viewers will know precisely what I'm talking about.
yeah.
Where it's like this is a whole bunch of sayings, and what's the connection here? But then after a while, after you go through it the second, third, fourth time, a pattern starts to come out. You start to see it, and then you start to remember things, and um, you continue to see patterns. I got to a point where I started using colored highlighters. I'm a color deprived child. I grew
Mm,
up in a household that had black and white TVs, and they didn't get a color TV until after I moved out.
wow.
So I use color highlighters. 1 month I'm green, 1 month blue, 1 month red, and amazingly, I have a very colorful book of Proverbs. But it's amazing how God speaks to you on different times, on different things, and what jumps out at you. So that has been a big help. But then the more I've gotten into God's Word, of taking the time and sitting down to read it, the better, I don't want to say a better man I've become, perhaps a more sensitized individual I've become. Um, that you start listening more, or seeing more, or something happens in your life and you realize, whoa, that was a God moment. That wasn't just, by happenstance. That was the divine intervention that I was talking about earlier.
Well,
Yeah.
and you just recently had a very profound God moment. You recently retired, which in and of itself is not the God moment, but you,
For some of us it is, yeah,
yeah.
but
So some of us, getting to that point, it is. But you retired, and you and your wife decide you're going to move out of Arizona, and you're going to go back to the East Coast and end up in Delaware. And before we came on today, you were telling me about that journey. Can you go back to your and retirement age, obviously,
sure.
and you're loading up 300 boxes of cargo by yourself to move you and your wife
Yeah.
cross country.
Yeah.
Um, t- Tell me a little bit more about that.
We this particular incident was a second major time in my life where something has happened that came completely out of the blue and is definitely the hand of God. No doubt about it. We we ended up we had been in Arizona for close to 10 years, a bit more than that, and had decided we really needed to move back home. Maureen uh, missed people back here on the East Coast. She's a Jersey girl. She wanted to be around people that are like her. Wanted to put her feet in the sand. Wanted to just be back home and experience four seasons again.
Hmm.
Um, Unless you've lived in Arizona, it's impossible to try and communicate what that's like. Aside from being 115 throughout the middle of summer and cooking everything,
Right.
um, yeah, we finally decided, okay, it's time to come home, and we found a house, and it's a nice big home, and I thought I wanted it A because it had a big enough garage for me, but B because it had a beautiful set of rooms that I thought would be great for Maureen, and it was ADA compliant. Um, Maureen's not handicapped, but she has had sarcoidosis, so from time to time it's been hard for her to get around. So here we get this place thinking that, oh, this is going to be wonderful and wonderful for her. So we load everything all up and move back here. 300 boxes into a cargo truck. I packed everything, loaded most of it. My son-in-law then came out and gave us a hand, got the rest of it loaded with it. I had some good friends from back in Arizona that helped, take care of that with us. But it was a lot of hard work. And got here, painted half the interior of the house, unloaded all the boxes, got the household set up. I have a real yard with real grass, not rocks. Arizona, you don't mow rocks.
Right.
Here in Delaware, you mow grass. So I was doing all the yard work and enjoying it. Old McDonald Donald had a yard, EIEO,
Hmm.
all that. Had a great time. And then knew that I had to have some gastro surgery to correct some reflux issues that I've got. Went for the cardiac clearance, and much to our shock, discovered I had a problem. And that problem turned out to be three blocked arteries. One was blocked 100%, one was blocked 90%, one was blocked 80%.
But that's not
Uh,
how the doctor told you. He didn't just say, "Hey, we're checking you for the cardio." He said, "Tim,
my
you're healthy as a horse. Let's maybe do this
yeah,
extra."
my cardiologist went into this. You're as healthy as a horse, Tim. So yeah, let's just. I could give you a clearance now. We can't see 10% or 15% of your heart, and chances are everything's just fine. Or we can do the catheterization if you just want to make sure everything's all right. Yeah, having had experience with all these emergency management things and all the rest of this, the more intelligence you've got, the better. Going by that axiom, let's do the catheterization, doc. And then when he did the catheterization, he was as shocked or more shocked than I was on what he found, and that being the blocked arteries. To the point where, had I gone on the table for the gastrosurgery, chances are I would have had a heart event on the table.
But he
Um,
wasn't even nice enough to just say, "Hey, we found some stuff." He said, "Get dressed. We'll talk. There's some concerns." Like he left you in that state of what the heck.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the way he did it was that we were actually in the procedure room. They finished the catheterization, and he came over to me and he put his hand on my shoulder and looked at me and he said, "I am so glad that we did this. We found something, and we're not going to keep you overnight, but it's very serious, and I need to talk to you about this in recovery. I'll see you in just a little bit." And I'm like,
Yeah. Hey, by the way, go get dressed.
right. So we get back to recovery, and there is now this parade of people who are now doing pre-cardiac testing and imaging, and they came in, they took pictures of my chest and a whole bunch of other stuff. And then he came in and explained to me how bad the blockages were, and that he was stunned. He said, "I had no idea. There was no indication whatsoever that you had anything this serious." And the 100% blockage, as I told you earlier, the only reason why I didn't have a heart attack was that your heart can, it's not entirely unusual. It's a bit odd, but they call them collateral vessels, where your heart grows essentially its own bypass. And that's how this one particular area was being fed. I had no idea. I mean, all the work that I did, all the hauling of stuff and everything else, never even got winded. I mean, it was just like shocked. Um, so they went in and they did a modified double bypass, which means it's not quite a triple bypass, but it's more than just a double bypass. And took great care of us. And by the way, doing it here in Delaware, the doctor that we found is somebody we had instant rapport with. He has been in the same places that Maureen and I have been in. He's from New Jersey. He lived in Wilkes-Barre. He was a surgeon up there for a while. He's one of the top 20 surgeons in the country. What are you doing here in Delaware? Well, they brought him in special. They bought out his old contract, and they're trying to upgrade things here in Delaware because we have so many people moving into the area here. How do you do this, God?
Mm-hmm.
Now, to be honest, this is the second time because when I moved to Arizona, as we met, um, when I got there, I took the job, and now I'm not working 70 hours a week as a ranger. Instead, I'm doing 37 and a half hours a week. I should have been bouncing off the walls with energy and stuff, and I had nothing. Something's wrong. They had done a full physical in March or April, right before I left. I moved in May. I get out there, something's really odd. By October, they do some testing and everything, find I have late stage 2 prostate cancer, and it's a very aggressive form of prostate cancer. Where we were back at the camp, the closest city was Wilkes-Barre. Wilkes-Barre is known for a lot of things, but being a hub of medical technology ain't one of them. And yet here we are now in Phoenix, 3 of the finest cancer centers in the world. How do you do this? And I'm working for a university that covered all of it.
Mm-hmm.
On the salary that I had as a ranger, great job, but missionaries are paid better than rangers. I had nothing. And yet here we are, they take care of it. So this is the second time with this heart issue now. This is the second time I've been through something where it's like you're doing something miraculous here. Like beyond, you're arranging the puzzle pieces in a way that I just confound my ability to comprehend it, but I am so grateful for it. And you care that much about me? Really?
So you've had 2 leases on life,
Yeah,
and God is not done with you, or you wouldn't have had those.
right.
So what's in store for Tim to utilize those?
Well, that's a good question.
I mean, I'm allowed 1 per interview, so there you go.
Okay. Um, to a certain degree, I had to ask the Lord for a little bit of a paradigm shift. That once we got here, that after all this hard work that I had done for so long, that I would be able to give something back to Maureen, to spend time with her, to uh, to just enjoy our retirement together. Help me, Lord, to change that a little bit. I'm one of those cats that retiring is a
Yeah,
mystery,
yeah.
uh, a hard thing to grasp. And yet this certainly has had the effect of whoa, okay, can I slow down? Um, I love. You can see some of the stuff behind me. There's
Mhm.
models on the shelf and in the case behind me. I build models. You know that. I love building fire apparatus. I was a volunteer firefighter as well as working on the first aid squad. So it's near and dear to me, and I do all that kind of stuff. But I also feel very strongly that when the scriptures say that God created us in his image, that no, God's not a Homo sapien. Come on. No, he created us to be creators. That the ability to create, the ability to problem solve, the ability to imagineer, all of those different things, the skills that we have, that God creates the world and looks back and looks at it and goes, that's good. Hey, I've done some woodworking. I've done some models back here that I've looked at it and said, yeah, that's good. I get that. And there have been times where I've been at my workbench, whether it's woodworking or anything else, the model building, where I feel a connectedness with the Lord. There have been times where I've said, how am I supposed to do this? There's an idea. Are you a model builder? Well, yeah, of course he's. I mean, we're living in it, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And I see oftentimes that my hobbies inform my spiritual life or my everyday life, where um, Jesus taught that way, where the kingdom of God is like, well, hey, if you're going to put a good paint finish on something, you have to give it time to dry. So don't go grabbing it while it's still wet. It's common sense, but there are applications to our regular everyday life where you and I have grabbed it when it's wet and
Mm-hmm.
we made a mess.
Mm-hmm.
So I, I'm hoping that at this point, maybe in this hopefully funner
Yeah.
uh, period of my life, um, that uh, I'll be able to share some of the wisdom, share some of the skills, share some of the um, insights from the hobby and or the hobbies or the interests, and do that in a way where I'm glorifying God and bringing people closer to the Lord. That He wants us to enjoy life. It says in Ecclesiastes that there's nothing better for us than to eat, drink, and
Yeah.
enjoy life, and that's a gift of God. Um, so if there's a way that I can help to do that, one of the things in my plastic modeling is I'm a scratch builder, which means that I just don't take a kit and put it together, but that oftentimes I'm taking sheet plastic or other materials and I'm creating something that's not even in kit form. One of the things I did was Squad 51, which is the famous paramedic wagon from the old TV show Emergency from way back in the 70s. There's no kit of that, but I scratch built one myself, and then I created a conversion kit that I'm providing to other guys. But in the process of that, I'm trying to teach them the craft of scratch building. And scratch building is something that you do, you don't necessarily have instructions. You have a set of skills guidelines, and you follow those guidelines and words of advice and creative thinking and imagineering in order to get from point A to point B. And gosh, that sounds an awful lot like my spiritual life, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
So,
are you going to write a book?
ah, yeah. I have a website. I have a Facebook page. Of course, everybody has those nowadays. Um, I used to write the column for called the Model Firehouse in a magazine that's now gone. It was Scale Auto Enthusiast magazine. I did that back in the 1980s and early 90s and developed a name for myself so that, people know that, oh, he's the old professor on this stuff. So even now, like I'll sell somebody a kit or give them some piece of advice, and then suddenly the guy goes, "You're Tim Bongard," which always kind of like, yeah, it's a little embarrassing, but at the same time, it's like um, the notoriety. Um, it's one tiny little fragment of life, and is it really all that important? No, not really. But then at the same time, for some of these guys, yeah, it is important. I've had two or three guys tell me that either they were um, involved in alcohol abuse or in drugs, and that they got hooked on scratch building or model building, and one of the columns that they kept finding good pieces of advice in that they could apply was the model firehouse. Really? I'm always amazed how God uses it. But then again, that's the other piece of this that always that strikes me as just so profound, Daryl, is that in God's economy, nothing, absolutely nothing goes to waste. Our worst mistakes, he uses. Our best efforts, he uses. Those absent-minded things that we do, he uses. And then those times that we are at our best, where we're focused and devoted and able to glorify him, and we've got hands raised and we know we're doing it deliberately, he's like, all right, attaboy, kid, attaboy, you know.
It's always it always amusing. And I'm just writing down a note because I love what you said. Nothing in God's economy, nothing goes to waste. Um, it amuses me how we as humans always tend to feel so unworthy of sharing God's message. But if you actually read scripture, there isn't a giant in the Bible who wasn't fallen far at some point. Moses was a murderer, David was an adulterer. You just don't have the superheroes who aren't blemished. And yet we think because we're blemished, we're not worthy, to serve in that fashion. And it's so far from the truth, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I what is it about us, I guess, as moderns? We tend to forget that Peter knelt before the Lord and said, "Depart from me, for I'm a sinful man." Or that Moses stood barefooted before the Lord and said, "You got to find somebody else because I'm not the guy. You got to be kidding me.
Hmm.
Me? No, it's not me. No, find somebody else, Lord. Take my brother Aaron.
Right.
Oh, there you go. There's a good bus chucking kind of move.
Right.
Here, grab him.
Yeah.
Uh, they weren't Billy Graham. They weren't Joel Olstein or any of these other like well-known evangelists or modern church leaders that we have that we glorify. No, no, these guys were um, flawed
Hmm.
big time. Thank God, just like me. Um, and in this vast universe, just the idea that um, the great I am cares about me,
Hmm.
that he hears me. Um, I can complain about some of the dumbest things or some of the most petty, ridiculous things. Um, I some of my concerns are just so ridiculous at times, and I bring them to the Lord and I gripe about them. And the next morning, the sun rises and the day starts again, and He has resolved that problem in ways that sometimes just leave me going, scratching my head or walking away laughing. Um, there is no doubt in my mind that he hears us, that he sees us, that he loves us, and enough that he kneels down, he reaches into our lives, he says, "It's okay, you're going to be all right," and guides us through. And no, we're not perfect. Um, Part of that, I think, is so that we can learn how to say, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." I've had to go back and think of both grandma and my mom. Um, Father, forgive them. They didn't know what they were doing. They didn't get it. You know, Father, forgive me. I didn't know what I was doing. I hope that someday my first wife will forgive me. You know, I am so grateful that my current wife is so gracious and loving and cares so much about me. And when the wheels come off for Maureen and I, the glasses can come off, and we can look one another in the eye and say, "Oh, there you are. There you are. I remember you. Yeah, okay, it's okay." And the fact that she can do that to me, I think when God does that to me too. I created those eyes. I created that heart. I didn't create it for evil. I created it for good. Come home to me. So I guess for me, the hand of the divine and the divine providence that I've experienced, it has been a witness to the wooing of God's Spirit to come home for each of us in our own way, to come back home.
Love that. That's beautiful.
You
My
know,
my um, as you know, my wife's been ill for 9 years, 10 years now, um, and she always had a really good connection with God. But she always says that her connection was even deeper through her illness because she had to stop standing on her own and kneel before Him.
she was a sweetheart.
And I love the grace that you can give to yourself in those moments.
Yeah,
Retirement doesn't mean that we just stop living and stop doing stuff, but it does mean we get to slow down so that we can better enhance the lessons that God gave us to
right.
glorify Him while we're still here. And you're learning those lessons and you're living that lesson. And it's such an honor to know that people like you are out there and exist and giving back. I'm going to ask you one last question as we wrap this up,
Sure.
because we could talk for days. Um, what does having a warrior spirit mean to Tim Bongard?
Um, Gosh, I could answer that a half dozen different ways. So bear with me with this. Um, as a first stater, it meant running to the accident scene and lending comfort and aid. As a firefighter, it meant being willing to go into a burning building and get whoever it is that's in there out. And they do that without grabbing the victim and getting them out onto the front porch and going, "Oh, it's you," and throwing them back in,
Right.
right? No, it's going in and getting somebody out. Um, as a scout or scouter, it's standing on the principles. And I have to say this: I know that scouting has taken a real hard rap over the last 15, 20 years, and rightfully so. Boy, have we found ways to shoot ourselves in the foot in terrible ways. But there were times that in meetings I had to say to other leaders, what part of trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, or reverent is this?
Mm-hmm.
We could recite too the fruits of the Spirit as Christians. And I think we need to do more of that, where we need to hold those around us, especially people in leadership positions, accountable for what part of our standards is this. In this day and age, this is tough. The warrior spirit means standing for what's right. And there will be times where you'll be afraid. There will be times where you may feel panic. There will be times where you're going to want to run from the scene. And you have to seize on, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to be brave. I'm going to do what's needed here. It's so easy to be that one person to stand up to do what's right and enjoy the shock of how many people will follow you because that's what was exactly needed in that moment. The warrior spirit means living aware so that when the need arises, you can be the answer.
I love that.
Right.
Well, I love that you're in my tribe and that you definitely exhibit the warrior spirit in the heart, and living the divine through what you're currently doing. So, thank you for joining me today. And it's an honor to have people like you in my circle, and I just appreciate it.
I appreciate you, Daryl, and thank you so much for doing what you're doing. And you were a wonderful guy to work with. I am so grateful that God brought us together as friends and as coworkers, and that continues. I thank God for you. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity today.
I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye.
You too.
Thank you for joining us on this edition of A Warrior Spirit. We're now on all the major platforms as well as Roku via the Prospera TV app, so be sure to like or subscribe to catch all the episode. And as always, the journey is sacred, the warrior is you, so remember to be inspired, be empowered, and embrace the spirit of the warrior within.
It's not just about the fight, it's how we rise from it.